Welcome to the fascinating world of theatre. Let us discuss about one of the most significant topic on Sanskrit theatre, that is, Introduction to Sanskrit Theatre. Highly literary and poetic, the Sanskrit dramas had an elite audience in mind. Sanskrit is a highly inflected Indo-European language related to classical Greek and Latin. It was primarily a literary language employed for documenting the affairs of state and for composing literary art. Not only was Sanskrit the language of the elite and educated, the Sanskrit dramas are dense with poetic devices, literary, mythic, and historical allusion, and literary devices and ornaments of all sorts. Furthermore, the stories that the plays dramatize tend to reinforce upper class authority and values. At first glance, the Sanskrit drama seem to be very exclusive. On the other hand, there isn't all that much Sanskrit in Sanskrit dramas. Only the most elite characters in the play, divine beings, kings and Brahmas, speak Sanskrit. Other characters including soldiers, merchants, townspeople, etc. and very nearly all women speak a variety of languages referred to collectively as Prakrits, which means that characters occupying the stage together and carrying on conversations with each other are very often speaking different languages. Imagine a play in which a king and his closest advisors speak Latin, while his queen and lesser members of the court speaks Italian, and the merchants and town people who conduct business around the capital speak Spanish and Romanian. Sanskrit dramas, therefore, must have appealed to a relatively diverse audience. The plays include so much Prakrit dialogues that the wider population of people who could not access Sanskrit would nevertheless have been able to follow a performance of a so-called Sanskrit drama just fine. Sanskrit drama emerges in fragments and short pieces beginning in the 1st century CE and continuing to the 10th century. The most commonly read and performed examples of Sanskrit drama include plays by Bhas, Shudraka and especially Kalidas. The work of all three of these playwrights comes within the first 3 or 4 centuries of the tradition. The plays often concern the exploits of the kings and heroes of history. As with the Greek tragedies, historical figures of Sanskrit drama include mythical persons and the subjects of epic poetry. Supernatural beings of several varieties play important roles in the stories of Sanskrit drama. Important characters in Sanskrit dramas also come from the middle and lower classes, including soldiers, merchants and hermits and sages. Of the two principal types of drama, Nataka plays feature stories about kings and divine beings. The Prakarna plays concern stories that revolve around middle class characters. With very few exceptions, the 300 or so Sanskrit dramas that we have end happily with conflicts comfortably resolved. The king and his wife are reunited. The king and his wife are reunited. The king discovers a son. The girl's discovery of her royal or divine parentage clears the way of marry into the royal family. Even an exception like Bhas Urbhangam, which concludes with the morose death of its protagonist, does not affirm the sense of futility or the nihilistic worldview that figures so prominently in Greek tragedy. Sanskrit drama consequently regards existence as orderly and predictable. Conflict in the plays occur as individuals make attempts to act outside of an order sustained, if not established, by divine forces, and all such attempts are redirected so as to bring the characters back into their ordained places. Even so, the plays are not necessarily predictable, since the characters themselves don't always realize exactly what their ordained places are until they suddenly occupy them. The king and his wife are supposed to be together. The king is supposed to have a son. The girl was royalty all along. The action of Sanskrit dramas includes precious little actions. Most often, the potentially exciting movements of a drama occur off stage and are related to characters on stage by way of messengers, letters, or eyewitnesses who can see what is happening out of view of other characters and out of the view of the audience. Although the plots commonly involve battles, kidnappings, flying demons, and rampaging elephants, what we get on stage in a Sanskrit drama is dialogue about kidnappings and elephants and so forth. Nevertheless, as in many other dramatic traditions around the world, Sanskrit drama creates and sustains tensions through the plans that characters lay in dialogue with each other. The obstacles that arise to prevent those plans from coming to fruition and the ways that characters maneuver to accomplish their aims anyway. The dialogue of Sanskrit drama consists of both verse and prose. Within a single unified speech, a character may slip out of prose and into verse and back into prose several times. Dense with figurative speech and imagery, the verses demonstrate the playwright's poetic skill because the verse in his play Shakuntala, the playwright Kalidas, for instance, is perhaps regarded in India more as a poet than as a dramatist. Besides the dramatic literature that survives from the period, the tradition of Sanskrit theatre gives us some practical information about play performance and also a theory about how we experience theatre. The Natyashastra, an encyclopedic volume dating from between the 1st and the 4th century CE, touches on almost every practical aspect of theatre art, and it speculates in a theoretical philosophical way about how theatre affects an audience. The concept it dubs Ras is still essential to Indian aesthetics. The following examines the work of the best known Sanskrit playwrights, provides an overview of some representative portions of the Natyashastra, and offers an approach to the complex idea that is Ras. The Natyashastra, Bhas, Kalidas, Shudraka. The Natyashastra. What does theatre do? Mostly, we go to the theatre looking for some kind of story. We hope to see the characters with which we identify doing stuff that we care about. Perhaps we go to the theatre to see a slice of life played out in a way that seems familiar. This interest in theatre may be described as an Aristotelian sensibility, since Aristotle asserted that we mostly go to the theatre to see the theatre imitate the world we know outside of the theatre. The kind of theatre that reiterates Aristotle's theatre gives us the activity of characters as stories that have clear beginnings, middle and end with almost obligatory climaxes of action and emotion just prior to the stories. So, while concluding, often our appreciation of this kind of theatre is rooted in psychological evolutions of the motives and intentions of characters. The Natyashastra is basically a book of theoretical practice and theory that is much more interested in aesthetics than psychology. Appearing early in the tradition of classical Sanskrit drama, Natyashastra's primary interest is in the stylish possibilities of bodies in motion on a stage. The theory of theatrical performance that the Natyashastra promotes has become important to understanding all the arts. In India, one can hardly assess the quality of a novel or a poem or a dance or a painting without using the term ras, which the Natyashastra identifies as a touchstone of aesthetic experience. Scholars date the Natyashastras early as 200 BCE and as late as 600 CE, most likely in a form similar to what we know was composed between 200 CE and 400 CE. Generally, the work is attributed to a single author named Bharata. Though we know next to nothing of this individual's identity, or even if Bharata is a proper name or an acronym or title, it is possible that the text was composed by several authors over a period of decades or even the centuries. Whoever it was, the author of Natyashastra clearly knew theatre from experience. The Natyashastra's primary concerns are not philosophical or theoretical. Rather, it spends most of its time elucidating how theatre is done, from the construction of theatre buildings to the application of makeup to the design and building of props to arm movement, foot movement, eye movement, with additional chapters on music and audience appreciation. Nevertheless, one problem we must face with respect to the Natyashastra is a distinct absence of conclusive evidence that classical Sanskrit dramas regarded the Natyashastra a prescriptive text, which is to say, we don't know how the theatre that the Natyashastra advocates looked or sounded. Sanskrit dramas allude to things that seem to coincide with parts of the Natyashastra, but many Sanskrit dramas also include elements that the Natyashastra forbids. In any case, we have no confessions by any Sanskrit playwrights that they look to the Natyashastra as a definitive document. Furthermore, no living traditions of theatre go back as far as either Sanskrit drama or the Natyashastra. Kutiyattam theatre may have originated in the 11th century, and it probably has the strongest claim to continuing the tradition of Sanskrit dramas. But ultimately, the specific art that the Natyashastra describes is dead. We have only the text of the Natyashastra itself and the implications of Sanskrit drama to fuel our speculation. On the other hand, the Natyashastra does give us an enduring and intriguing theory about theatrical performance that pervades South Asian aesthetics. Bharata, sense of how theatre affects audience rooted in his understanding of the Sanskrit term bhav and ras, still illuminate and challenge how we think of what theatrical performances can do. It was written in Sanskrit, which identifies it as a work of erudition intended for an educated elite audience. The Natyashastra also confirms an attitude that associated theatrical performance with religious activity. On the other hand, the text confirms that theatre performers in classical India occupied a particularly stratum of the social hierarchy. Now let us see Bhas. The playwright Bhas probably preceded Kalidas, producing Sanskrit plays in the 2nd century CE. The Buddhist poet Ashvaghosha wrote plays in Sanskrit in the 1st century CE, but these survive only in fragments. It is therefore likely that Bhas gives us the oldest complete Sanskrit dramas, although numerous poetic and critical sources in the north and in the south of India cite Bhas plays and acknowledge the poet's skill. Bhas plays were completely lost sometime before the modern period. Scholars attributed several plays discovered in the early 20th century to Bhas, and today the field mostly accepts 13 extant plays as Bhas. According to their literary genealogy, they are the group 1 Mahabharata, plays were Madhyamavayogya, that is the middle one. Second is Pancharatram, 5 nights. Third is Duta Vakyam, the message. Fourth is Duta Ghatotkachams, that is Ghatotkacham's message. Fifth is Karna Bharam, that is Karna burden. Sixth is Urubhangam, that is the broken thigh. Seventh is Balacharitam, that is the story of Krishna's childhood. The first 6 plays of the first group are one-act plays based on the Mahabharata. All 6 can be found in A&D Huxer's English translation. The last of these plays is a long play that relies on the tradition of the Harivamsa, a 1st century CE devotional that is commonly regarded as an appendage to the Mahabharata epic. In truth, the Harivamsa more resembles Puranic literature than epic literature. Now let us see the group 2, that is based on Ramayana. The plays were, the first is Pratima, the statue. The second is Abhisheka, the consecration. Group 3, that are the other plays. The first is Daridra Karudatam, that is Karudat's poverty. Second is Swapna Vasavadatam, that is Vasavadatam's dreams. The third is Pratijina Ogadhana Dharayanama, that is the minister's woes. Fourth is Avimarakam, that is Avimarakas, the Mahabharata's plays. Fourth is Avimarakam, that is Avimarakas. The Mahabharata plays of the first group include some of the most important short plays of the Sanskrit range, if only because examples of the shorter genres defined by the Natyashastra are less common. In contemporary terminology, we would refer to plays like Karanabharam and Urubhangam, which consist of only a few pages of dialogue as one-act plays. Classical dramaturgy, descending from the Natyashastra, classifies such plays as Ankas, but these plays are peculiar for other reasons. Bhas does not always treat the epic material with which he works as inviolable, while Kalidas largely transforms the Shakuntala story that is to be found in the Mahabharata. Dushyanta and Shakuntala are rather incidental characters in the epic. So, Kalidas' adaptation of his story does nothing to the epic central narrative. Bhas, on the other hand, reimagines some of the Mahabharata's pivotal episodes and develops new stories and interpretations of the epic's major characters. Furthermore, Bhas' work does not strictly subscribe to the conventions catalogued in the Natyashastra. Most notoriously, the play Urubhangam prescribes that the character Duryodhan die on stage in direct violation of the Natyashastra prohibition of death on stage. Some of the scholars have suggested that the ways in which Bhas' work departs from the dramaturgical recommendations of the Natyashastra indicate Bhas' radical artistry. However, the unconventional elements of Bhas' plays may be an indication that the full text of the Natyashastra ought to be dated later than the 2nd century. Rather than a radical intention, contravention of the tradition, the Natyashastra codifies Bhas' work may tell you that in his day, the tradition of the Natyashastra had not yet been codified, and perhaps that the Natyashastra had not yet been written or accepted as authoritative. Even so, the way in which Bhas plays with the well-established narrative traditions of epic and religious literature indicates a playwright who valued his own creativity and aesthetic as well as religious judgments. So, while concluding the Sanskrit theatre is inseparably related to the origin of Indian theatre. It draws heavily from the Sanskrit literary tradition. The dramatists of Sanskrit theatre worked on pre-existing mythological or historical themes that were well known among the audience of that age. Bharata's Natyashastra is a keystone work in Sanskrit literature on the subject matter of stagecraft. So, this is all about Sanskrit theatre. Thank you.